Boom.
Okay, take two. Awesome sauce. We're so excited that you're here with us this afternoon.
Can I get Gigi to the front?
And of course, like all the phones are going off in all the places right as we get started. Perfect. And the computer. What we'd like for you to do, if you could please rename yourself and your organization, put it in the chat. Actually, you don't have to rename yourself. Just put your name and organization in the chat. If you know somebody that's also in the room, feel free to say hi to them. And let's see what friends we have here with us this afternoon.
And your attention, please. Go.
Welcome. Wow. Michigan State University. You are far away from us, Laura, but I am super excited. I'm going to be in that region soon and I can't wait. So what we wanted to do is just kind of very briefly go over the agenda. We'll have talk a little bit about Cali and our County Office of Ed Innovation Hub, go over that teacher call to action fairly briefly at a 30,000 foot view, and then really wanted to dig deeply into the different ways that we want to use the document and think about the different types of audiences that we will be working with, and then think about some of those next steps. So what is Cali, and what are the authors of this resource, just so you know a little bit about us. The California Environmental Literacy Initiative is led by 10 strands, and it works statewide to change the education system so that it supports environmental literacy with a focus on equity, inclusion, and cultural relevance for all students. As you can see, we have all sorts of different working groups. We call them innovation hubs within the California Environmental Literacy Initiative. Our particular working group is our County Office of Education. All of the counties that on our lovely California map on the left, all of those counties that are in yellow have attended our community of practice. Sorry, there's a lot of acronyms and they all seem to start with C. So I'm trying to make sure I'm getting them all right in my head. So we have our community of practice for environmental literacy at the county level. Those are all represented in yellow, and our orange counties are those that are actually included within this County Office of Education Innovation Hub. And one of the things that we love to do is we love to create different types of resources for people at different levels in the educational systems. So we started this process a couple of years ago with our call to action for education leaders. So really looking at alignment of MTSS and LCAPs, really at that, what is this at a systems level, and how can we bring environmental literacy into those programs and frameworks that are already in place. And then that just got us the ball rolling, and we've created all these others. We would highly encourage you to go to the Cali website to check out all of these for your work. So what is the call to action? That is why we are all here this afternoon, is to start really thinking about what is that teacher call to action and what does it look like? So you can do one of two things. If you like to work on your phone, you can actually take your phone and scan the QR code, or Tamara just went ahead and put into the chat. So you can also open it up as your 27th tab on your computer this afternoon, and take a look at that as well. So with our teacher call to action, that 30,000 foot view of things is really, we have an introduction, and our introduction is very brief, but really digging deep into the different parts. That first part is around the imperative of environmental literacy and wanting to think about what are all those different vocabulary words and things that, how do we talk about environmental literacy? And I say vocabulary because there's so much, and there's nuances of each one of those words. And sometimes we use them interchangeably when we shouldn't. So there's this whole section on that, and really thinking about why do we need environmental literacy? So all of the different reasons, all those different imperatives, and we're going to be digging a little bit deeper into those reasons a little bit later in this webinar. The second part of the call to action is around voices from the field. So we wanted to make sure that once we have these conversations around why we're wanting to do this work, it's always nice to see others who have been doing it. What are those exemplars? And not just exemplars from high school or middle school, but really looking at the entire K-12 system. And I would even say K-12 plus, because we also have CTE in there. And I think a lot of us think about CTE a little bit, they kind of get left out, but they shouldn't. They really are an integral part of our K-12 education. So we have these different voices from the field. And then once we're thinking about, we know why, we've seen examples, how can we do this ourselves? Our part 3 is looking at a roadmap for environmental literacy. So starting out with identifying that comfort zone, really, where are you? And then going into different, it's laid out in steps. There is a step for identify connections and get inspired. There's a step for identifying partnerships. We also have identifying trauma-informed practices and social emotional learning, identifying the campus as a laboratory for learning, and then ways to get involved beyond the classroom. They are laid out in steps, but it's not meant to be, you don't have to go in steps. It's really wherever your work takes you, and wherever the schools and the school districts that you're working with, wherever they take you. So that's really kind of this 30,000 foot view of the call to action. One of the things that we wanted to point out is, actually there's 2 things. The first is that you'll see throughout the call to action that there are these words that are in blue. All of those words that are in blue are actually links to the source. So this is kind of your one-stop shop for all of these links. So they are all there for you. The other thing is that we were very purposeful when we designed this. We wanted you to be able to use this by yourself, or as a professional learning provider, be able to use this with districts and with teachers. So all of the sections have reflection and discussion questions. So this is just a starting point. So it's either, if you're looking at this for yourself, it is a chance for you to reflect. If you are working with, let's say you're a high school teacher and you're working with your department, these are questions that you can start to ask each other and start to push each other's thinking forward on what environmental literacy means for you all in your school site and where you want to go and how you want to bring others in and on board to grow all of this. So I just talked really fast and had a lot of stuff, and I apologize, but we've got so much to do this afternoon. I am going to pass it now on over to Andra.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And I can share my screen if it's easier, because I'm actually going to go through the document a little bit. So if that's possible, happy to do that. Thanks. Great to see folks here today. And my job is to kind of go through the first section with you. And I'm just gonna like look at the document with you and give some suggestions of activities, and then we'll do one activity. So, oh yeah. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Sorry, I just saw something next to me that I wanted to show. Okay, so just to start with, in the document, let me share my screen like I said I would. So here we go. there's a lot of definitions in this first part. And the reason that there's definitions there is to give people just a chance to ground themselves in the fact that there's a lot of words that are used interchangeably in this field. And so it kind of runs you through a couple of the biggest ones that you hear a lot. So of course we have environmental literacy up here at the top, but then there are a number of other terms that connect to environmental literacy. In fact, I always show this slide as well when I do this so that you can see it, that like there's just a ton of different terms. And so the document has it, so some of them are defined. And I think a nice activity to do with folks is to either give them a visual like this and ask them like, what out of these things might you already be doing in your school or your school district or in your classroom? Because inevitably most people are doing at least one of these. Oftentimes it's just 21st century skills or global competence, but many, many times people are doing one of these other terms. Either way, it gives people a chance just to be like, oh, I know what this is. Actually, I do something that connects to it. So I think that's like a great starting point. That's why we included that in the document. The second thing though is really more getting at the imperative. So there's so many different imperatives here that you can hit on. And the reason that we included all these different ones is because everybody has a different entry point. So when I take people through this as a professional learning provider, like I always start with the moral imperative and really like grounding folks in just this idea that kind of captures this quote over here that the student is saying, like, I don't know how to handle doing my homework when I'm hearing that the world is going to end from the climate crisis. So there's this like moral imperative to like the next generation and really being there for them and helping them navigate through this. And then there's, of course, like there's people who you're going to come across that are more compliance mindset. And so really hitting the curriculum imperative and saying like, well, there's these California environmental principles and concepts, and actually you're required to do them. Like those people, that's what that one's for, is so that you really hit that. And there's a whole timeline that goes along with that. And some people really want to see that to get a sense of just how long have these been around for, and is this going to stay? And you can be like, yeah, this has been around since 2003. So I think it's going to stay. And so that just gets people like more engaged if they're of a compliance mindset. Other folks who are still kind of more that compliance aligned or more like initiative aligned, helping them understand that this really connects to MTSS and UDL and all those buzzwords right now that are in our California system. Like this is for them so that they can see, oh, that's connected there. Other folks really care about college and career. So we've put in some information there about how, pretty much this entire public higher ed system has put sustainability and climate resilience in their top 3 priorities. So if we're really trying to prepare kids for college, at least in our state, like they need to be looking at this. And then of course, the green economy is super fast growing, and it's where many of the different sectors have made this shift. So helping folks really understand like this is what college and career ready means, is like doing this work. I think that can be really helpful. And then there's the folks who respond really well to just like the gloom and doom disaster world, which is me. So people like me like need to know like that this is getting bad and they better get on board, right? And so that kind of helps them, but also to say like, by doing this work, you can alleviate some of that scary terror that you might have and start talking about it, right? Like everybody's feeling that, but if you don't talk about it, it's even more scary. So sorry, or even scarier, it's probably the right way to say that. But the emergency preparedness and getting really ahead of disasters and how they're going to disrupt learning is really, really critical. So I also think like, I always share this with folks to say like, let's go from a reactive stance to a proactive stance so that you're not constantly doing just this like emergency mindset. So like get out of triage mode basically and get prepared. And then the last piece is some folks are like, yeah, but is everyone doing it? Right. So then you have this public opinion side, right? Where you can say, actually, yeah, everyone's doing it and everyone cares about it. So this really helps get people on board. And then beyond that, research also shows that it's just a win-win. Like there's not a negative thing that you can say about including environmental education into curriculum. It has academic gains, social and emotional gains, like health gain. Like it's like, I always say, it's like the holy grail of education. So if you can start putting that into it, the professional learning, you'll really get to hit everybody. So what we would do then after kind of sharing all those imperatives is then push people into a breakout room and say like, what's resonating with you? Like what really works for you? So I'm going to do that. We're going to do that right now. We're going to go, oops, I don't know what's happening. Sorry. We're going to go into a breakout room where you can share with other folks here, like which part of the imperative resonates the most with you? What do you think would help gain buy-ins for the community that you're doing the professional learning with? And then like, why are you so committed to bringing environmental literacy into your professional learning? Because we know you're here, so you must have a purpose. And I was gonna put this on because I just watched what is it called? The movie Wall-E. I watched Wall-E yesterday with my kids, and I was so excited that I had these ears at home. And I just wanted to share that that's like my purpose, is really helping children navigate the scariness of this world and figure it out, and help them, not feel like it's so scary, because there's a lot that we can do and there's still a lot of hope. So that's my purpose. We're going to open up some breakout rooms for you to do your purpose now.
Welcome back, everyone. I think our next section is our wonderful Peggy. Is she? There she is. Do you want me to share my screen, or would you prefer to do that?
Why don't you share yours? That way I can have, I always lose things when my screens shift. Thank you so much, Peggy. Or Katie. I'm Peggy. I know my name. I swear. I do. Thank you all so much. It was wonderful hearing all of the different voices and thinking about what your imperative is and what resonated with you. We have a really broad range with us today in thinking about backgrounds and audiences. And so in addition to supporting teachers directly with this teacher call to action who might want to begin this work to either advance a current initiative or start an initiative at their own site or within their own district, we also included elements that could be used to support environmental educators more broadly to use this guide as an outline specifically for a professional learning either session or series. So we're going to ask you now to really think about the lens that you might be using to engage with this document based on your particular group, your audience, or your setting. Because when it comes to environmental literacy more broadly, there are a lot of audiences for this work specifically. So thinking about your own target audience, if you wouldn't mind just noting in the chat who you might be working with, whether it's either you're working on your own as an educator or maybe with your own grade level team without any type of facilitation, whether or not you're hoping to use this document to maybe begin work at your site level or maybe your district level with larger teams, maybe in a single session or across a series, or whether or not you're thinking about engaging with early learning educators or expanded learning or non-formal educators. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute And in the chat, adding who's your target audience? Who might you be using this document with to engage in professional learning? School site, district leaders, community of practice. Yeah, really taking the time at the district level and county level to think through what this might look like. District and city leaders. Oh, thank you for adding that, Mark. K-12 leaders as part of a summer institute, or maybe pre-service educators and current teachers thinking about NGSS standards and sustainability. Any other audiences? Yeah, engaging TK5 now and thinking about how we're applying NGSS. What a range. Yes, thank you, Amy. Great to see that. Yeah. City leaders, district leaders, community partners. There are a lot of resources within this document that really allow for you to open a range in thinking about who you might use or who you might engage with as your target audience. So if you could hit the next slide, please, Katie. So throughout the document, I know many of you are probably seeing it for the very first time and just had a chance to really look over the first section, thinking about the moral imperative. But in each section, there are reflection questions that really highlight ways that you can begin engaging educators, either formal or non-formal, in thinking about what this might look like to and for their classrooms. So thinking about those reflection questions specifically, if you're working with elementary teachers and reflecting on ways that they can engage with community partners, they might be thinking about different field trip activities or ways that they can bring in guest speakers into their classroom. If you're working with secondary teachers, they might be thinking about community partners when it comes to engaging in internships for students and having students really begin to think about that agency piece and being able, like Andrea said, to be able to take action and make change within their community so that they begin to see themselves as environmental stewards. And when thinking about informal educators, thinking about how our informal educators focused on environmental literacy can really begin to collaborate more effectively with schools and respond to the needs of the schools and their local community. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we said, oh, there we go. And also in part 2, there is a really wide variety from the voices from the field. We have a large group of examples from San Mateo County Office of Education's fellowship program, where we have classroom examples of teachers engaging in these types of inquiry projects. But we also have K-12 examples of research projects that really dug into a wide variety of settings, looking at the impacts of environmental education and environmental inquiry specifically. And so there are examples from the voices from the field that look at formal and non-formal education, collaborations with community partners, collaborations with local museums. So there's a really wide variety of case studies that really highlight what a partnership might look like when universities, nonprofits, classrooms, and community partners collaborate and really begin to allow students to see what it might look like to get involved beyond their classroom and really feel connected to their community. Please. And like Katie was saying earlier, there are also, in addition to the voices from the field, there are also examples throughout the document that are highlighted. And we have 2, the Kids Eco Club here down in San Diego, and the Sit-Sci on the Farm that's at the University of California at Davis Student Ecological Garden. And both of these projects are examples of really how these different types of collaborative partnerships with community-based partners, non-formal educators, universities, can really begin to design co-curricular activities that expand the student engagement beyond their classroom setting and into their community, really thinking about problem solving and ways that they begin to see themselves being able to take change and have an impact. So now we're going to get a chance to think about what it might be like to utilize this type of document with the professional learning audience that you've identified. And so we're going to have a chance in breakout rooms to think about ways that we can use this document either as a whole or in sections, depending on the need of your audience, either in a single setting or maybe in a few sessions or series with times for reflection in between. But thinking about different ways that this document could be used, either with educators on their own or in a professional learning environment as a series or solo. But thinking about the wide range that we have access to within our communities, and that all of those different engagements have a place and space in this type of environment, depending on the district's needs, your community partners' needs, or the needs that the different educators have. So as we go into breakout rooms now, this time we're going to have you choose your breakout room based on your job alike or your target audience. So you're going to choose whether or not you're in the teacher leader category, professional learning provider specifically, or informal and non-formal educator, and think through how you might utilize this document and ways that you might be able to adapt depending on the needs of your audience. And Amy has opened up the breakout rooms. Thank you so much. And I'm going to join the non-formal educator breakout room.
Would it be possible for someone to put me in the professional learning provider room?
Sure thing.
Yeah, it's a nice
Hey,
talk.
everybody. Same. Thanks, Annette.
Okay.
Whoops.
Sorry, y'all. When we come back, like all the screens go all wonky on me. I hope that everybody had a lovely conversation in their breakout room. I know ours was fantastic. And I could have sat there all day with Mark and Tamara and had chit chat about all sorts of different things. So thank you all for engaging in that. For our next little section, we want to just talk about some next steps that you can take depending upon who you are and what your role is. So moving forward, thinking about environmental literacy, some of those things, if you're working alone, choose a step along that roadmap, share your learning with a colleague, reach out for support, grab another colleague to do it with you. And then also we have a video guide, which is a self-guided tour through the call to action. So that might also be something that you would like to do. If you are providing learning for others, really thinking about, well, what is your why? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to engage others in this? Who's going to be that audience for you? And really, what is your plan? So are you thinking about doing this as a one-off professional learning, or is it a series, or how you can bring other audiences into that? So start thinking about those things. And if you're thinking, wow, this is great, but I really would like some resources and support beyond just myself and Callie, we do have our website and we are always here for support. There's also the California Association of Science Educators. There's our History Social Science Click project. You have the North American Association of Environmental Education. You have the UC California Naturalist Program. You always have your local county office of education. Really just reach out to everyone, all of us. Somebody will jump up at the chance to support you. You're thinking also, wow, this has been interesting and I'd like to know a little bit more. We had a wonderful conversation in our breakout room around the State Seal of Civic Engagement, which is our next webinar. We would highly recommend that you share this with a friend and bring a friend with you. It's a very interesting way to start looking at environmental literacy through the lens of civics and looking at civics through the lens of environmental literacy. So really, how can we help students obtain the State Seal of Civic Engagement using an environmental focus? And then we also do have one also in June, on June 2nd, around community-based partner network toolkit. So how we can all support kids and educators to think about environmental literacy and ways to bring kiddos out into the world. We thank you from our County Office of Innovation Hub. Please, as I said, reach out to any of us, all of us. We are happy to answer any questions. And also there is the Callie website that all of our resources are here. All of our webinars from the first season, it's a season. We have the season of webinars. Our first year of webinars are all on there. It's all recorded. The recording for this webinar will be sent out probably tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And also with a link to the slides so that you can use all of these yourself. We thank you so much for being here. We'll hang on if you have any questions. We appreciate your time and all that you are doing to support our students and our educators and bringing environmental literacy to the forefront of everybody's thoughts. Thanks so much.